This week's episode of PokeClass is sponsored by Collector's Cash, your #1 place to go for all your single cards and sealed products. Make sure you check them out after the show at www.collectorscash.com. Hey everyone, Dan here and welcome to episode 108 of PokeClass, where today we are yet again at that exciting point of the year. National Championships are coming up fast and the last set released before these events are finally here. That's right, Plasma Freeze officially hits our shelves on the 8th of May, but pre-releases are in full swing, meaning that we have an entire set list already, so without further ado, let's get on to my black and white Plasma Freeze set review. As I do with any set review, I'll just go through the different types as they appear in set order and go over any cards that are either really interesting or are set to change the game as we know it. So the first type is grass, and with most sets there isn't really much here to whet the appetite. The pick of the bunch has to be Execute with its ability Propagation. What this ability allows you to do is if Execute is in your discard pile, you can place it from your discard pile into your hand. Now what you may be thinking is, so what? What use is that? Well, you can actually pair it with another new card in this set, Weavile, which has the attack called Vilify. What this allows you to do is discard any number of Pokemon you like from your hand, and for each one you do 30 damage. Simple. Hopefully you can see the synergy between these two cards. If you end up discarding 4 eggs with this attack, you can do a nice 120 damage, but the best part is that Execute can come back into your hand the following turn to give you that guaranteed damage every single time. Obviously, this combo is very cool, but very gimmicky, as you need a lot to go your way to get some decent damage onto the board. Pair that with the fact that you'll be playing 4 30 HP starters and you've got yourself a problem. Overall, awesome creative concept, but not good enough for serious competitive play. Up next, we move on to the fire Pokemon, where we hit our first EX in this set, Heatran. To me, this card is nothing but one of those ordinary EXs that is borderline playable, but will never see the competitive tables. What I mean by this is the attacks aren't all that bad, and because it is a plasma Pokemon, it does benefit from Colress Machine. However, there will always be better attacks out there. The first does 60 damage and then 60 more if Heatran is affected by a special condition itself, which will happen often thanks to laser, but you'd rather get the poison damage off of it instead of using it to attack with, because your EX will be hitting the discard pile the next turn, in return for just 120 damage output. This second does 80 for 4 energy and 10 more for each damage counter on the defending Pokemon if there is a plasma energy attached. This I can see having some cool uses, but the 4 energy attachments, even with the likes of Colress Machine, just isn't going to be worth it. Cool looking card, but unfortunately nothing more. The next fire Pokemon I have a small soft spot for nostalgia reasons, and that is Chandelure because of its ability Flare Navigate. What this ability allows you to do is search your deck for a fire energy card and then attach it to one of your Pokemon, then place a damage counter on the Pokemon you attached it to. The nostalgia behind this is because Typhlosion Prime used to have a very similar power back in the day and was the center of a deck I really enjoyed playing. However, this one goes one step further and attaches from the deck instead of the discard pile. This could be used in a deck with Reshiram and possibly Reshiram EX to get the old school style of deck back into competitive play, but as we all know, stage 2s are very tough to do well with right now, and even more so after this set release. The ability to search out energy from the deck is extremely strong and can pair well with Super Rod after the energy has been used. I really like that this kind of ability is back in the game, and there's no doubt that I will try it, but can it stand up to the speed of the format right now? I'm just not too sure. Moving on to the water Pokemon next, and we have Glaceon first. This one is more of an interesting card than a game-breaking one because of its ability called Freeze Zone. What this does is when Glaceon is on your field, each of your own team Plasma Pokemon gets 2 less retreat cost. Things to note are that this doesn't include your opponent's Plasma Pokemon, and that will be a large shift towards using Plasma Pokemon due to the more powerful cards in this set. I don't think that this will be used extensively because of the fact that Glaceon is a stage 1 and that Floatstone is also in this set, but we'll get to this later. Interesting concept, but I don't think this will get too much play. Now we move on to one of the biggest Pokemon in the set, Plasma Curum. This card on the surface looks fairly average, but when you see the damage output paired with laser and the fact that it's a Plasma Pokemon, this one prize attacker can deal some crazy damage. The first attack is Frost Spear and exactly the same as Landorus's first attack, hitting 30 on the active and 30 to a benched Pokemon. The best part is that you can do this in one turn using Colress Machine, and it will also hit Landorus for weakness too. But the second attack, Blizzard Burn, is where it's at, which costs 3 energy for 120 damage. This can effectively be set up in just 2 turns thanks to Colress Machine, but it can also hit for a ton of damage when paired with Laser, Virbank and Deoxys too. Deoxys is a new card in this set and has an ability which adds 10 damage to Team Plasma Pokemon's attacks, which we'll look at more in depth later, but this also works for Kyurem too. This means that a Blizzard Burn could do a maximum of 190 damage with Laser, Virbank and 4 Deoxys on the bench. Crazy for a single prize attacker. Obviously that is with outrageous situations, but this guy can deal some serious damage with already popular combos. Even though Kyurem can't attack the following turn, this Pokemon is worth it and is set to be a decent attacker. Definitely watch out for this one. Moving on to lightning types now, and we have Electrode, who is in the review for its ability called Magnetic Draw, which I think some of you that have played for last season will remember. And this ability is still similar to Magnezone of the past, but understandably a little weaker in the way that you can only draw up to 4 cards into your hand per turn. This is kind of like a permanent bicycle every single turn, which we've seen played in small numbers, but Electrode is going to be a huge bench liability being a stage 1 with fighting weakness. Voltorb also only has 60 HP with fighting weakness, which is going to be risky at the best of times. Overall, interesting ability, but another that may miss out on the top tables. Now we can move on to one of the 2 huge EXs in this set, Thundurus EX. This card has been extremely hyped and is on par with Landorus because of its amazing cheap and powerful attack that can be further boosted by new cards in this set. The first attack for just a single lightning energy is called Raiden Knuckle and does 30 damage, which is decent, but it also has the effect that you can attach an energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Team Plasma Pokemon. First off, 30 damage is really nice, as we've seen with Landorus already because of that extra damage you can get with Laser and Virbank, but you can also get even more damage thanks to Deoxys and Thundurus being a Plasma Pokemon. This can rack up some seriously important damage on turn 1, dealing a ton of early game pressure, but also gives you some amazing energy acceleration thanks to it being able to grab back both basic and special energy. The second attack from Thundurus deals 90 damage for 4 energy, which is slightly steep, but if one of those is a Plasma Energy, you can discard an energy attached to the defending Pokemon. This is a little bit expensive, but can be worth the extra discard on your opponent's side to slow them down that extra turn and make their turns a little bit harder to work with. Thundurus does have that double fighting weakness, which could pose a problem, but the advantage Thundurus has is the speed element, and hopefully it'll be quick enough to take out those fighting Pokemon first. Overall, Thundurus has a lot going for it with speed and power all built into one. The card is good, and the deck that it's set to be played in is even better. Watch out for this card and grab them while you can. Moving on to Psychic Pokemon now, and the first one I wanted to briefly look at is Mr. Mime, thanks to its ability Bench Barrier. What this ability states is that as long as Mr. Mime is on your bench benched Pokemon cannot be damaged by attacks. This one is interesting because of the importance we've seen extra bench damage having in the current format, Darkrai and Landorus being the main ones. This means that single Mr. Mime on your bench saves you from the extra bench damage both of those Pokemon do, which can mess up the maths on your opponent's side. The only downside is that Landorus and Darkrai could be seeing a decrease in play anyway, thanks to the really strong Pokemon in this set, but either way, a very interesting possible tech in any deck. The next Pokemon I want to talk about is Deoxys EX, the most hyped card of the set next to Thundurus, probably because they make one hell of a team when played together. Deoxys has a single ability called Power Connect, which I've touched on already, and gives all of your Team Plasma Pokemon an extra 10 damage towards their attacks. What makes this amazing is that this is for each Deoxys you have on the bench, meaning that you can have a maximum of 40 extra damage to all of your Plasma Pokemon's attacks. 40 damage does seem small at the beginning, but when paired with Laser and Virbank too, you've got a potential 70 extra damage as well as poison and a sleep flip as well. This is a massive amount of damage to add to any attack, and this will become apparent when paired with the likes of Thundurus, making very heavy hitting and quick attackers. Deoxys also has a fairly decent attack too for a single Psychic and a Colorless Energy, which does 30 damage plus 30 more for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon if it has a Plasma Energy attached. This isn't the best of attacks, but when paired with the extra damage from itself and other sources, this will be able to hit very hard when you need it the most. Most notably, this will be able to deal with Mewtwo EX, which gives Mewtwo something pretty big to think about and deal with when it comes to competitive play. Overall, Deoxys is big, and I'm sure we'll see the impact it's going to have on our game in the next few weeks. On to Dark Pokemon now, and it's Umbreon up first with a brief mention, as it also has an ability that affects Team Plasma Pokemon, similar to Glaceon. However, this one gives each of your Plasma Pokemon 20 more HP. As for notable Plasma Pokemon, 170 and 180 HP are the ones you want to be boosting, making them 190 and 200 respectively. Now this is always going to be a good thing, as it gives your EXs more time on the field, but having to have a fairly weak stage 1 on the field is always going to come back and bite you. A cool ability, but it won't be seeing too much play. The next Dark Pokemon, Weavile, has already been covered in this episode, so I won't say too much more on that. This means that we move on to Absol, another Dark Team Plasma Pokemon. The reason this card is worth a mention is because of Mind Jack, Absol's first attack for a Dark and a Colorless, which does 20 base damage and then 20 more for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. This means that Absol can hit for up to 120 damage for 2 energy, which is really nice, and it can be set up in just one turn thanks to Dark Patch. The issue with this is that the damage output is controlled solely by your opponent, which is never a good thing. However, it is a nice surprise attacker that could come out of nowhere and punish a full bench, especially with Deoxys coming into the format. Overall, a very nice and interesting card that could see some play with Darkrai, and we'll have to see how well it fares in competitive play. Now we skip on to the Dragon types, and within just 6 Dragon cards in this set, 2 of them are EXs, Latios and Latios. The first one I want to look at is Latios, as it seems the weaker of the two. The 2 attacks that this card has are severely underwhelming, and even though Luster Purge does a massive 150 damage, the energy is kind of awkward thanks to Water and Psychic not being on the same blend energy, and you have to discard all the energy to attack. This means 150 for 3 turns of attaching and losing all of your energy just isn't good enough in this format, but maybe something with Blastoise could work. Who knows? This brings us on to Latias, who brings an interesting ability to the table called Bright Down, which states that all effects of attacks, including damage from Pokemon that have abilities, are made 0. Now if you think about it, this blocks out a lot of attackers such as Keldeo and Darkrai, but other big ones such as Landorus, Mewtwo, Thundurus, and many more can still get through. Pair that with Latias' fairly weak attack, 70 damage for 3 energy, and you've got a mediocre Pokemon. This card has been receiving a little bit of hype recently, but I do think it may have been misplaced. Moving on again onto a Pokemon that I find really interesting, and that is Kecleon. Kecleon has an ability called Color Change, which turns Kecleon's type into whatever the opponent's defending Pokemon is. So if Keldeo was in the opposing active position, Kecleon would turn into a Water type. Kecleon's attack is then called Im-Attack, which allows you to copy any of the defending Pokemon's attacks as long as you have the appropriate energy to do so. This is a very interesting and possibly universal attacker, as this can actually knock out a Mewtwo for just a double colorless and a laser, assuming the opponent also has double colorless energy attached. Because Kecleon's ability turns it into a Psychic type, Kecleon then hits for double damage when Im-Attacking Mewtwo's X-Ball. The advantage of using this rather than a Mewtwo of your own is the single prize it gives up rather than 2 when it's knocked out, which is going to be fairly strong. However, Mewtwo's future is already questionable, so we'll have to see what else this card can come in handy for in the future. And the last Pokemon in this set review is Thundurus EX, the second Thundurus EX we have available to us, this time in its alternate form. Its first attack is interesting as it costs a single energy and allows you to shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw 6 cards, very similar to Cleffa from last format, which helped aid consistency in almost every deck at one point. The second attack, however, isn't too hot, as it costs 4 energy for 60 damage and then 30 more for each plasma energy attached. Granted, you can do up to 180 damage by having 4 plasma energy attached, but this is a very rare situation, and with that lightning weakness, it isn't going to be around long enough to attach that many plasma energy. This card is an interesting one thanks to its refreshing of the hand utility, which we don't have much of at the moment in terms of Pokemon, but at the cost of a 2 prize EX, this may just be too much of a risk in return. That being the last of the Pokemon, we now move on to the trainers cards from the set, where we start with Floatstone. This card is quite a big one, as it is a tool that when attached gives that Pokemon free retreat. So this is going to be a huge asset for all decks that feature hefty energy costs such as Landorus and even Deoxys, and giving them the freedom to switch in and out as they please. However, the biggest advantage this card gives is to Garbodor. Garbodor has always struggled with its retreat cost, and this card kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Literally. This will get rid of Garbodor's hefty 3 retreat cost and also activates Garbotoxin 2 thanks to Floatstone being a tool card. This is a great asset for Garbodor to have, and I'm sure this will be on many players' minds when coming to deck choices in the future. Next up is Frozen City, our only stadium in the set, and states that whenever an energy is attached from the hand to a Pokemon, place 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. This sounds okay, but doesn't affect Team Plasma Pokemon, so it's obviously for those running Team Plasma. However, I don't think this really hurts too many decks, apart from maybe Blastoise Keldeo. The issue with running other stadiums is that there's almost always Verbank to try and get out there for the easier extra damage rather than waiting for your opponent to attach an energy to do so. It is nice to see other stadiums entering the format, but the war is probably going to be won by Verbank. Next is the supporter card Deoxys, which has been getting a bit of hype since it was announced and released in Japan, but I'm not too sure how important this is going to be in our developed format. What this card does is allow you to look at your opponent's hand, force them to shuffle in all of their item cards into their deck, and then you draw the same amount of cards you force them to shuffle in. Now this is a very powerful asset to have, first being able to look at your opponent's hand, and then being able to disrupt their following turn by taking away their options. The reason this isn't going to be a massively great card is because players will see it coming, and if the opponent has another supporter in their hand anyway, they can try to draw out of it. Overall, I'm not too sure if the disruption is going to be worth taking out straight draw supporters such as Juniper and Skylar, as you won't be drawing a consistent number of cards each time with Deoxys. We'll just have to wait and see whether this card does make any impact in the format. Shadow Triad is next, which is another supporter card that simply allows you to take a Team Plasma card from your discard pile and place it into your hand. By Team Plasma card, this pretty much means anything with the blue Team Plasma writing and big Plasma logo in the background of the card. This card does seem cool for getting resources back, but the Team Plasma decks that are coming to light at the minute are so fast that they may just not be needed right now. Interesting recovery card for Plasma decks, but probably not needed at the moment. Now we've got some item cards, and the first one is the biggest from the set, Superior Energy Retrieval. What this card allows you to do is discard 2 cards from your hand and then place 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. Now this card is actually crazy for Blastoise, as we know already how powerful energy retrieval can be at the best of times, but being able to get 4 energy in one turn and then attach them straight away is huge, especially when Black Huron forces you to discard a ton of energy per each 200 damage attack. This was exactly the card that Blastoise needed to hit near the top of the competitive field now that it can spam Black Huron turn after turn, as you can run 4 of these in every single deck. This card is huge for the format right now and should be seen in all Blastoise decks very shortly. Next is one of the 2 Team Plasma items in this set, Plasma Badge, and it is a tool that when attached will turn whichever Pokemon is attached to into a Team Plasma Pokemon. This means that you can take advantage of Chorus Machine, Deoxys, and the Plasma Stadiums with whichever Pokemon you like, and gives you a lot more options when it comes to abusing the Plasma system. The only problem with this is that you're going to need to rely on keeping Plasma Badge on your Pokemon to keep it a Plasma Pokemon, otherwise the rest of your deck will flop. However, Tool Scrapper isn't too big at the moment, so think of the possibilities. This is a very interesting addition to the Team Plasma engine, and I look forward to seeing what people can come up with. Team Plasma Ball is next, which is a very simple to understand card, as it allows you to search your deck for a Team Plasma Pokemon and then place it into your hand. This is a simple search card that you are going to be seeing plenty of in Team Plasma decks. Simple. Now we're on to the final 2 cards of the set, our Ace Specs. To be honest, both of these aren't game breaking, but still are interesting enough to go over. The first one is Life Dew, and is a tool that forces your opponent to take 1 less prize when the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out. What this means is that if an EX with this attached gets knocked out, your opponent will only take a single prize card rather than 2, and if a regular Pokemon gets knocked out, your opponent gets no prize at all. This does sound awesome at first, but as with any tool, you need to keep this one on your Pokemon for it to even work, and then the effect as a one-time thing can just be achieved with careful planning instead of using your Ace Spec spot for it. The next one is called Rock Guard, and is also a tool which inflicts 6 damage counters of damage on the defending Pokemon when the Pokemon this card is attached to is attacked. So imagine something crazy like a Druddigon with this tool attached. That will be 8 extra damage counters taken by your opponent's Pokemon when attacking. But other than that, this is an underwhelming card right now, but could see more play when some newer cards come out. But again, Computer Search, Scramble Switch, or Dowsing Machine are all going to be better choices. And that is finally the end of this crazy long set review. There are a lot of interesting cards in this set right now for the format at the moment, but I think they may just get better after the rotation, where we might see a huge impact from some of the currently mediocre cards. As for all you collectors out there, there are a massive 8 full arts and 6 secret rares in this set, which is insane. On your screen you'll see some of the pictures of them, so this set is definitely one for you collectors out there, and we finally got a full art Professor Juniper. Took your time. But anyway, that was my Plasma Free set review, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Next week is going to be an awesome episode featuring the Thundurus Deoxys Kyurem deck we touched on briefly during this episode, so look out for that. And if you happen to enjoy this week's episode, then a like would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you're new to the channel and watching this video, then please do hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon videos, and I will catch you all next time. Have a great week.